As you learned in the introductory video, postmodernism is a style that has many different strategies. This video is going to talk about historicism and the way that postmodern graphic designers looked at historical styles in order to inform their work. By historical styles primarily, I'm talking about the type of thing we saw in Unit 1. And at the beginning of Unit 2, we talked about how those styles felt out of date. 50 years later, they are fresh and new and really countercultural because of the way that they disrupt the rules of international style. It's for that reason that historical styles from the 19th century are really popular in the countercultural music scene. For example, the poster we're looking at here by Wes Wilson. This is a poster advertising a concert by Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band in San Francisco. The text is practically illegible because of the swirling typography, all hand-produced. The image itself is hard to say exactly what it is as well. It sort of looks Egyptian, but it has this very flat geometric pattern that should remind you of Viennese posters from the early 20th century. In fact, these Viennese posters were on display in Berkeley in 1965, and so it's very possible that Wilson and other graphic designers working at this time saw them in the exhibition at the University of California, Berkeley. So when we put the Wilson poster next to Alfred Roller's Secession number 16, you will see that the text is very similar. The way that he is putting these curling serifs at the end of all of his letters is decorative but also disruptive. In fact, it was so illegible that they included text at the bottom of the poster, as you can see, that had the information so that if you wanted to actually go to the concert, you could figure out where it is. This could not be more different from the type of posters that international style designers are producing. So when we put this next to the Mueller-Brockmann, you can see that Wilson is breaking every single rule. It's not asymmetrical. The text is not flush left. There's practically no negative space in the entire thing. And while there is a grid, there doesn't seem to be any regulation to that grid. In fact, the two rectangles that make up the poster aren't even the same size. And so in all of these ways, Wilson is disrupting the so-called rules. This is perfect for the type of music that he's advertising, though. So if the one on the left is classical music, a Beethoven concert, the one on the right is Beethoven, the one on the left is psychedelic music that is supposed to disrupt everything that the baby boomers held dear. Here's another example of this type of poster by Victor Moscoso. So Moscoso actually trained at Yale, and so he was very familiar with all of the rules of international style. And you can kind of see that here because there's elements of this poster that seem more regulated than the other. For example, this is based on a photograph, and so in that way he's embedding some of the strategies that Moholy-Nagy developed that we also saw in the Swiss style. However, he takes out the recognizable figures in the photograph and replaces them with this swirling psychedelic text that is once again illegible. Perhaps one of the most famous examples of this is the flying eyeball that Rick Griffin designed for Jimi Hendrix. So again, you see the illegible text that you need to read the information at the bottom if you want to actually know what's happening. But it's meant to be very disruptive. I mean, what we see here is literally, it's like the poster caught on fire and this winged eye started to fly through it with its tentacles. Rick Griffin was part of a group of designers called Berkeley Bonaparte. It was an agency that marketed poster art produced by countercultural artists like Wilson, who we saw earlier, Moscoso, Rick Griffin, then Alton Kelly, and also Stanley Mouse. So they saw themselves as this kind of unified group and specifically marketed their style to countercultural musicians. You see similar things happening in album design. So on the left, we have the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band from 1967. This is a collage of photographs with the Beatles at center in their Sgt. Pepper costumes. But to their left, there's actually photographs of their wax counterparts from Madame Tussauds. And then the rest of it is simply a collage of famous people that Blake and Hayworth add in there. This should remind you of Dada and Dada photo montage, like Hannah Höchst's cut with the kitchen knife. Dada was meant to be explicitly countercultural and disruptive, and that's also what the Beatles were going for in their age. One last example of historicism, and this is from much later. This is Paula Scher's Swatch ad on the left in 1985. This was an ad for Swatch watches that appeared in Mademoiselle magazine. And you can see that she's imitating actually an international style sort of poster by Herbert Matter. He was a Swiss designer who moved to the United States and taught at Yale and was very well known. The poster that he produced on the right is for to encourage people to come to Switzerland on vacation in the 1930s. And he incorporates all of these kind of constructivist and Bauhaus strategies. Well, 50 years later, Scher is doing something very similar in her Swatch ad. Swatch is a Swiss watch, and so it kind of fits. However, it's almost exactly the same as the Herbert Matter ad, right? And so is this an homage or is this plagiarism? Most people saw this as kind of an ironic nod to Herbert Matter, who had trained so many graphic designers in the United States after the war, rather than being straight up copying. But you can see that it has this kind of irony that is very prevalent in postmodernism, in which they're referencing the past, but they're also kind of laughing at it, almost like it's an in-joke.